Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Here we are, another week, another topic, another Wednesday, and I am so glad that you are here with me right now, whether you're watching the replay or if you're on here live. Thank you for being a member of this community. I think that we have really built such an awesome space that I hope that you feel comfortable asking questions and sharing your wins. That's what this whole group is all about, is providing that space for you to get the support and accountability that you need along your journey. So if there's anything you need, you let me know. But for right now, let's jump into today's training on artificial sweeteners. And I actually am really excited to talk about this topic. This topic actually got suggested to me by an old client. So thank you, Samantha, for suggesting this. I think it's a really great topic because there is so much, I don't know if confusion's the right word, but there's a lot of conflicting information and thoughts, and so I thought it would be a really great opportunity to kind of dissect it all. And the bottom line is a lot of it does come down to personal preference, but I wanted to give you the information that I have and to help you make the best decision for you. So let's start. Artificial sweeteners, there are so many different ones, right? There's, I don't even want to go through all of the names, but we know what those are. Non-nutritive sweeteners are 0 calories, 0 sugar, and they are like hundreds of times sweeter than real sugar. And it came about as an alternative to sugar to help with weight loss. And so here's the thing. There are so many products that have a ton of artificial sweeteners in there to make them lower calorie, to make them lower sugar. And that's great. The diet industry has thrived on that. The thing about it is that it is a processed food. So if you're trying to reduce your processed food intake or trying to only eat whole, real foods, then that's something to keep in mind. Now, another thing to think about is that artificial sweeteners, although they don't, and the reason, it just said it was trying to reconnect, so hopefully I didn't lose you. Artificial sweeteners I hope we're good now. Are you guys still here? Are you still with me? I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Let me try again. Third time's a charm. Artificial sweeteners can increase your sugar cravings because, like I said before, they're hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. That intense sweetness makes your brain say, I need to get me more of that. And so if you're trying to stay away from sugar, but you're getting even more sugar cravings, then that can be really counterproductive and frustrating, right? Like, I'm trying to stay away from sugar, but I'm having all these sugar cravings. And because if you rely too heavily on artificial sweeteners, then your brain is just like, give me that sweetness, get me to that high level of sweetness. The other thing that can happen is that when you do eat sugar, once you're used to that high level of sweetness and artificial sweeteners, once you go back to sugar or have something with real sugar in it, you actually are more inclined to eat more of it to get to that same high level of sweetness that now your body's gotten used to. So it's like you're trying to get to that 100 times sweeter as artificial sweeteners, but with sugar, if that makes sense. So it can be like sugar, you need to eat more of it to feel as satisfied, which we don't really want to like overdo it on the sugar, right? Something else that, before I talk about this, I wanted to mention the, artificial sweeteners, that whole thing about artificial sweeteners causing cancer. So the research was done with rats, and I cannot remember all the details of those studies, But the gist is that the amount of artificial sweeteners that they were feeding these mice or rats or whatever they were like, it was like this insane amount. It would be the equivalent of like hundreds of Diet Cokes every day for however long. And yes, that did cause cancer, but it's just so unrealistic for what we actually would be consuming as humans that pretty much people in the field were like, yeah, no, that's not realistic. And it's not really a concern because we're not having that high level of artificial sweeteners. The other thing I wanted to mention about artificial sweeteners that new research is showing, which is kind of interesting, is that artificial sweeteners can increase your insulin resistance in a similar way that too much sugar can. So insulin resistance is that precursor for diabetes. Basically what happens is insulin is the hormone that, here's insulin, here's glucose. Glucose is the broken down form of sugar. Insulin helps that glucose be brought into your cell to be used for fuel. Glucose being the primary source of fuel for cells. So if there's too much glucose because we've been eating too much sugar, then our sensitivity to the insulin sensitivity goes down because it's like overwhelmed. And then when there's too much glucose hanging out in the cell, in the bloodstream, that's when your blood sugars go up, your A1C goes up, and that's when we can diagnose diabetes. So now that we understand what insulin does, how can artificial sweeteners do a similar thing? Well, when you eat something with artificial sweeteners, it's really sweet, and that triggers to your brain. Your brain says, something sweet, must be glucose. Time to pump out some insulin so we can bring that glucose into the cell. And then the insulin is there, and there's no glucose because it's artificial sweeteners. So now we have all of this extra insulin hanging out, which means it's less sensitive. The insulin sensitivity decreases, or another way to put it, you are becoming, insulin resistant, which is, like I told you before, that same precursor pathway to diabetes. So it's kind of concerning that products that are put out like for diabetics, sugar-free products, can kind of cause the same insulin resistance that we were trying to improve in the first place. So I'm not saying that to completely scare you off or to say never have artificial sweeteners, but what we're trying to avoid is relying too heavily on them, because if we're having them too much all day, every day, then it can become a problem. And like I said before, it can increase your sugar cravings, which won't be helpful if you're trying to lose weight or decrease your sugar or improve your health. Okay, so those are all of the kind of, we can say like the negatives of artificial sweeteners. But the reality is that it's true. There's no calories, there's no sugar, but it is processed. So if we're trying to kind of be working towards reducing the processed foods in our diet, artificial sweeteners kind of are tagged along with that. I get a lot of questions about monk fruit and stevia. So although they are derived from plants, so they are more natural, but like we get stevia in a white powder, and that's not very natural looking, right? Like that is still processed. So even though it came from something that was more natural than, chemically making the other artificial sweeteners, so I do prefer stevia because it is kind of more natural, but we have to still recognize that it is still a processed food, similar to monk fruit. And it does behave in the same way, like I was talking about before, of increasing those sugar cravings, because they are so intensely sweet that it triggers that to your brain. So kind of like pros and cons to think about on both sides. And then something else is that, what was I going to say? I lost it. We got a lot of really great responses in the discussion question from yesterday. So I hope I addressed all of those questions. Let me actually just pull it up really quick. Usually I have the discussion question pulled up so I can easily reference it to make sure I'm answering all of the questions. I think I did a pretty good job of covering most of the questions. While that's being pulled up, does anybody who's watching right now have a question so far about anything that I've talked about with the artificial sweeteners? Not yet. Okay, let's see. We've got a lot of people saying no. Okay, so somebody had mentioned that she thinks that they could be linked to cancer, and we talked about that, right? Somebody else says that she uses stevia and monk fruit only, and we talked about that. Somebody else says that she uses honey if something needs to be sweetened. So talking quickly about honey, it is a natural, it's from bees, so it is more natural. The reality is that honey is still an added sugar because you're adding sugar and calories, but it's not really adding any other nutritional value. However, honey is a great natural sweetener, but just to remember that it's not necessarily like a super healthy food that we can be like using all the time. I mean, you can use it all the time, but it's one of those things we still kind of want to be aware that it is still considered an added sugar. All right. We have somebody else who said, no, not now, but before 2022, she used Splenda every day in her coffee. It's not used now because I don't need it and because it can trigger the desire to eat other sweet, sugary foods. So that goes right on what I was talking about earlier about having it cause more sugar cravings, right? Somebody else said she wants to wean off, which I think is great. If we can kind of get to fruit being that highest level of sweetness in our diet, if you're trying to get as close to whole unprocessed foods as much as possible, in nature, fruit is that highest level of sweetness. So if we can kind of work towards that, I think that's awesome. Now, if you want my personal opinion, is I think in moderation, just like anything else, just like added sugar, just like, our treats, but artificial sweeteners can be, in your day here and there, or in your diet in moderation. I don't think that we have to completely, but this aligns with my whole nutrition philosophy, right? Like, I don't believe in completely eliminating any like one type of food, never. Because the reality is that I do use some artificial sweeteners. I don't use them all the time, but in some of my recipes that I'm trying to keep lower sugar, I use them. And just some things here and there, I do use them. And I would never tell somebody that they can't. And I also wouldn't tell somebody that they have to take away all added sugar either, because it's about that balance and moderation, right? We've talked about the 80-20 rule before. Something else that we didn't talk about is that artificial sweeteners, a lot of people get some GI upset. They feel bloated, maybe some diarrhea. So that's something to consider too. If you notice that you do not respond favorably to artificial sweeteners, then absolutely don't eat them. But if it doesn't really cause that, then that's fine. Other people don't like the aftertaste. I personally don't notice or really mind, but a lot of people don't like that back taste from artificial sweeteners, and specifically stevia. I get a lot of complaints about stevia because it does have that aftertaste. So all that to be said, we kind of know the cons. I went through them. The insulin resistance, the increased sugar cravings, we don't really have to be worried about the cancer, the GI upset, the the bad aftertaste, and that it is processed. But there are some pros too. You know, it can help keep foods lower calorie, and if you like them, then you can have them in moderation. So I hope that kind of cleared it up. Oh, while we're talking about it, this actually doesn't have any. This is not sponsored, but I don't know if anybody has tried this before. It's an orange vanilla seltzer, so there's no artificial sweeteners, there's no added sugar. It's just like a seltzer water, but it tastes just like an orange creamsicle, except for it's not sweet, but it's that same flavor, and I love them. I highly recommend if you are somebody who likes sparkling water, or you're trying to wean off soda but you really like carbonation. I really like those, and I think there are so many awesome flavors of seltzer water, but there's something about that specific flavor that really does it for me. There was one other question that I wanted to address that isn't necessarily related to artificial sweeteners, but that somebody asked me that I wanted to touch base on right now as well. And the question was about the temperature of drinks and if it makes a difference in your body. So really cold drinks take longer and take more energy from your body to bring it up to body temperature. If you like drink something really cold, maybe you even get a cramp, or you feel like it doesn't feel great in your stomach because your body's actually trying so hard to put all its resources to increasing the temperature to bring it up to body temperature. So if you're wanting to rehydrate really quickly, or you're wanting to get, if you're trying to guzzle down some water because you're super thirsty, doing room temperature is actually probably better. There is some folklore about drinking cold water to help with weight loss or increasing your metabolism. And for that reason, because your body has to work harder to bring it up to body temperature. I don't know exactly how many more calories it burns. I honestly don't think it makes a big enough difference to make a recommendation or a rule around it. So if you enjoy really cold drinks, then drink that. If you enjoy room temperature drinks, then drink that. Doesn't make a difference. Just keep in mind whatever will help you stay hydrated. So actually drinking your water throughout the day, and your body feeling the best too. So if you get cramps from drinking super cold water, then maybe we don't do that. All right. Any questions for me before I close out today's video? Thank you so much for being here and watching. I hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, absolutely let me know, because that's why I do these, to help you. And I want to make sure that I'm addressing your questions and the topics that you want to learn about. So just like Samantha did, she messaged me some topics she wanted to learn about. You can post it in the group, or you can message me, and I will be sure to put it on the list to make sure that I talk about it. Oh, this is really exciting too, and I want to be like the first here to tell you that I have a really exciting, completely free special event coming up. I'm going to make the announcement on June 1st, and that's when you can sign up. So keep your eyes out. I'll post it in the Facebook group. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see it there. But definitely keep your eyes out on the group for June 1st, because that's when I will be releasing the sign up, giving the information about this super special free event that I'm so excited about. All right, on that note, I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your Wednesday. Finish out the week strong. You've got it. You're halfway done. Let's finish through the week and get ready to share those wins on Friday. All right, take care, guys. We'll talk to you next week.